Today we're going to talk about every single one of the major transfers completed by Premier League sides in January. There's over 30 to talk about. I'm pretty sure some of you guys at home might have missed some of these. They might have slipped through the cracks, because there's some surprisingly good business in here. Let's start with Adama Traore, who joined West Ham for a nominal fee on a permanent deal. We've already seen him make his debut to much memeage, I think it was fair to say, because of the fight with João Pedro, the chucking of Marc Cucurella. I think this is okay. The fee's really, really small. He's working with a gaffer he's worked with before. He's going to be able to add some pace and power to a West Ham forward line that's severely lacking it off the bench. There's not a huge downside. Leon Bailey recalled from his loan. I have got a few loan recalls in here because I think it is relevant to talk, especially about a player like Leon Bailey, who was allowed to leave by Unai Emery. He joined Roma. It didn't really work. You think back to the best of Leon Bailey in that 23-24 season where he put up 19 Premier League goal involvements. He was extremely impressive playing off that right-hand side. And I think Villa had high hopes for Evan Guessand, who we're going to come on to talk about in a little bit. It hasn't worked, that deal either. The recall of Bailey provides a little bit more depth to a team that is severely lacking because of injury. Again, I think it's okay. Fulham managed to complete the permanent signing of Oscar Bobb for just under £30 million. He's only 22 years old. Very few minutes again this season. And it's easy to forget about Oscar Bobb's breakthrough when we saw what happened to him last campaign because of that horrendous injury. Let's not forget his sort of opening few games, particularly away at St James's Park, that touch and finish, his natural ability. One of the reasons that Manchester City allowed Cole Palmer to leave the club and go to Chelsea was because they believed Oscar Bobb had a higher ceiling than him. He's ended up going to Fulham. I think the injury issue is really, really sad for him. But nevertheless, this is a great opportunity. I think Fulham are a really upwardly mobile club. If, and it's a big if, Marco Silva was to stay beyond the summer, I think he'd be working with one of the best coaches in the league, especially at developing this kind of talent. You look at the volume of players he has at his disposal that have been sort of thrown out with the bathwater from the big clubs, be that the likes of Alex Iwobi, Emile Smith-Rowe, Ryan Sessegnon. They have a very clear signing model at the moment, Fulham. Add to this the fact that Harry Wilson is out of contract. Doesn't look like he is going to renew. In fact, he was close to leaving in January. And I think for everybody involved, this is a really good deal. Spurs beat Arsenal to the signing of James Wilson yesterday. Arsenal were very interested in doing this deal and have been laying the groundwork, but Spurs moved in pretty late, pretty last minute, managed to get a loan deal agreed with, I think, a £2.5 million option to buy. Now, he was really impressive last campaign. I think it was 5 goals in 15 or so starts as a 17-year-old. This season been a little bit slower. Spurs have let Dane Scarlett go out, which was a bit of a surprise to me, given the forward injuries they've got on their books. I know Solanke has returned, but I would like to have seen Dane Scarlett retained just for a little bit of depth. He's gone on loan to Hibs. I think given they've beaten Arsenal to his signature, and he is extremely highly rated amongst Scottish football fans, I'm going to say this is a good deal. The fee is, again, tiny. Sunderland, fantastic result last night against Burnley, managed to get that deal for Nilson Angelo over the line from Anderlecht very, very late in the day. Of course, Samad Adingra went to Monaco. Not going to talk about him in here, but we should talk about Angelo because statistically, he has been popping in a lot of sort of metrics. I know a lot of data analysts and reporters that have been speaking about Angelo and his dribbling ability because he is in the top 0.5% of dribblers in Europe so far this season. He is a fun watch. He's also put up 6 goals and 5 assists across the first half of the season. And I think Sunderland are probably a little bit disappointed about the output that Adingra was able to produce. But Angelo at £17.5 million has huge upside. And I am going to trust the Sunderland data recruitment department because you look at the other business they've done with the likes of Siddiqui, Habib Diarra. I think it would not be a huge surprise to anyone if Angelo comes in and is suddenly sensational. Okay, let's talk about the biggest, if not the second biggest signing of the January window. That is Jeremy Jacquet joining Liverpool. Now, despite the fact he has joined Liverpool, he won't be arriving at the club until the summer. But the fee is €70 million. That's €60 million plus €10 million in add-ons. I think it's pretty clear to see what Jeremy Jacquet brings to the club, though. He is a real unicorn of a defender at 6'4". His passing ability, his ball carrying ability, all exceptional. He's winning amongst the most aerial duels per 90 of any central defender in Europe. And statistically, if you put Jeremy Jacquet out on a radar, in terms of his aerial duel success, his tackles, his interceptions, his passing ability, and you then aimed for a radar that was the closest possible replica in the Premier League. Statistically, it is Ibou Konate, which I think is quite interesting because does this signify that Konate isn't going to sign that new deal and is going to leave, and Jacquet is going to come alongside Virgil van Dijk and be the long-term heir in that central defensive role? What I really like about the deal is that they've beaten Chelsea to the punch here. They've probably beaten Real Madrid to the punch. Manchester United were rumoured to be interested. By moving early, maybe paying a little bit more, they've guaranteed his signature, and it felt like at multiple stages through the January window, Lucca and Chelsea were going to get this deal done. So I think because of the fee, because of the age, because of the ability, he's captain every single France youth age group. The French centre-back depth is disgraceful, by the way. I think it has to be a wow. Oleg Zinchenko joined Ajax. You might well have missed this one for 1.5 million euros in a permanent deal. I think this is a really good move for Ajax. And probably for the player. This is a historic club. Yes, they're struggling in the Eredivisie, but we can't take away the size and scale of Ajax, the history that club has. Zinchenko will immediately make a difference to that side. I can see him even playing in midfield for a struggling Ajax team. If not, as an inverted left back, his on-the-ball ability has never been in question, and I still think he's a really, really good level footballer. Nicholas Füllkrug joined Milan. Ugh. I really dislike pretty much everything about this transfer. AC Milan obviously was still desperate to get another striker through the door. He's had injury problems already. He had injury problems at West Ham. It never worked there. It's a loan move, an option to buy. West Ham didn't get any of the money back that they paid out the door for him in this January window. He's 32 years old. But for a team that are really challenging for the Scudetto this season, does Nicholas Füllkrug move the dial there? Maybe he does, and maybe he's going to prove me wrong, but it's 1 goal in 6 appearances so far. West Ham managed to secure the loan signing of Axel Disasi from Chelsea. Of course, he's been a member of the Bobb squad in the recent past at the Blues, but he has played a couple of times so far this campaign. I think it's easy to forget he's still only 27 years old. Clearly not fancied at all on any level by Chelsea, by Liam Rossigna, or previously by Enzo Maresca. And West Ham did need a centre-back. I think their Igor loan got cut short. Max Kilman obviously is struggling so far this campaign. Todibo has now got a ban for at least 3 games because of the sending off. So that really just leaves Mavropanos. Does this move keep West Ham in the division? I think it has risks because they needed a centre-back of high enough quality that was an immediate starter in this first team. Is that Disasi? And if not, why didn't they go for a player they felt like could come in and have major impact on that defensive line? This season is not done and dusted for West Ham. I still feel like they could chase down one of Forest or Crystal Palace or Leeds. We haven't seen Disasi play enough football recently to say he can have that effect on this West Ham central defensive line. Leeds signed Buonanotte on loan. Of course, he was initially on loan at Chelsea. That didn't really work out. I think everybody involved was a bit surprised that deal even happened in the summer. But he has now joined Leeds from Brighton on loan. I don't think he's going to be a guaranteed starter there, but I do think he can be really effective off the bench. We've seen his moments of quality in a Brighton shirt. I'm going to say it's okay. Tati Castellanos cost £24 million from Lazio, where he had an okay scoring record. But again, I really think this one does have risks. £24 million is a large outlay for a striker. West Ham's history of signing strikers has been muddled, and that's putting it kindly. A lot of the strikers they've signed in the last decade have yet to reach or never reached 10 Premier League goals. I think Tati Castellanos is going to offer hard work off the ball. As we saw at Lazio, he can be a real dog. I kind of like the combinations we've seen so far with him and Pablo, but he has to score goals across the second half of this campaign to make £24 million worth of January outlay worth it. If he doesn't score any goals across this second half of the season, West Ham go down because of his age profile. This will have been an extremely risky move. Pascal Gross returned to Brighton. Absolutely love this move. I think it's a really good deal. The fee is sort of 1-2 million euros. He actually had an okay time of it at Dortmund. I think people were calling his time at Dortmund a failure. I think that's really harsh. His first campaign, he put up 14 goal involvements. I think that was 10 assists. He's an assist machine, a chance creative machine, as we saw in the Premier League. Last campaign, I think it was 17 goal involvements. So pretty solid numbers. Overall, there's plenty of winners. Brighton get a huge amount of experience back in the team, a man who knows the squad. I think they needed that experience in there as well. Fabian Hursley gets an excellent chance creator, a leader, and a player across the second half of the campaign can have a real impact. Brennan Johnson joined Crystal Palace for £35 million. Quite a lot of money, I think Crystal Palace fans would admit. So far, he started quite slowly. No goals in his first 5 Premier League starts. However, we have seen a player capable of producing 10-plus league goal involvements. He's done it very consistently with Spurs' top goal scorer last season. He is an XG machine, gets shots off from really good areas, and I think despite the fact he's struggled to his start of life for Palace, and it has been a little bit slow, I still think this is a good deal. And in the long run, he will prove to be a fine signing at £35 million, despite the fact he started slowly. Gallagher joined Tottenham for €40 million. A big fee for the 25-year-old returning to England, but it's nice to see him back. He had a huge impact against Manchester City at the weekend with that ball recovery, excellent ball in to Dominic Solanke's scorpion kick. There's a lot of upside to Conor Gallagher. I think what's going to be interesting is how he fits into the midfield when they have all of their best players back. When James Maddison's back, when Kulusevski's back, when Lucas Bergval's back. How does he operate and what role does he play in? What I do think is it's excellent depth, and Spurs haven't had enough of that over the last few seasons. So I'm going to say it's a good deal. I don't think, £35 million is not eye-watering amounts of money for a Spurs side who I think they raised £100 million through their ownership in the January window alone, didn't they? So he's better than a lot of the depth they had on their books. Evan Guessand has left Villa already on loan, despite the fact they paid over £30 million for him. He was coming off the back of a really, really solid campaign, but he's had very little impact at Villa. Clearly, Palace feel they need forward reinforcements. He can operate as a number 9, but also in one of those 2-10 roles. It does mean they're quite stacked there when you think of Pino, Guessand, Brennan Johnson, Ismaila Sarr competing for those 2 positions, really behind what would figure to be Jurgen Strand Larsen. Maybe Mateta somehow comes back into the fold now. That is quite a lot of depth. Guessand is only there for a short period of time, but then I suppose they're also competing in the Conference League, aren't they? I think this is okay. It's a short-term deal. There is potentially big upside. Very little downside for Palace. Mark Guehi joined Man City for just £20 million. This is obviously a wow. One of the Premier League's best centre-backs. Still a really good age. A leader in the dressing room. Amazing on the ball. One of the leaders in that Manchester City dressing room as Pep Guardiola leaves the club. Wolves got a deal for Angel Gomez over the line. Coming in on loan from Marseille. Of course, Timber joined Marseille, didn't he? Not Jurien Kinton. So that has kind of freed up Gomez to leave because he feels like he's not going to get as many minutes across the second half of the season. Now, he joined Marseille for a free in the summer and has actually started 12 Ligue 1 games. So it's not as if he hasn't featured at all for Roberto De Zerbi's men. I'm really interested to see how Gomez operates in a Wolves side that are drowning at the moment, because he's so diminutive. He wants to get on the ball and move it. He wants to be in a possession dominant side. How is he going to be at covering wide spaces, defending for probably 70% of the game, competing in the midfield for space alongside Andre, Joao Gomez, Bellegarde? This is going to be fun, but is it going to be fun for Angel Gomez? I think it has risks for him. I don't necessarily think it's got any risk for Wolves because it's just a loan move. In fact, I'm going to say it's okay. Tyreek George joined Everton on loan with an option to buy at £20 million. And I think this is almost a wow for me. I think this is a really good deal for Everton. Very little downside because of the loan with the option. It's not an obligation. His goal scoring numbers been pretty impressive when he's got on the field so far this season. A lot of them have come in the Carabao Cup, fine, but he's also played as a number 9. He's very multifunctional. He can play off the left, off the right. He's got good physical stature to him. He's really, really quick. This is a big opportunity for Tyreek George. There's injury problems in that Everton forward line to the likes of Jack Grealish. I don't think there's a full trust of Tyler Dibbling yet. They tried to move Dwight McNeil on. I think there's going to be plenty of minutes across the second half of the season for him. This could be a really good signing. Pablo joined West Ham for £20 million. Again, a signing that I think has risks. Still yet to score a goal. And I don't think his quality so far has been seen on the ball as much as it has been off the ball. He's a really hard worker, very intense. I kind of like them playing a front two of Castellanos and Pablo, but one of them has got to score goals in order to keep West Ham in the league. If you do £40 million on 2 strikers in the January window, then at least one of them, if not both of them, have got to provide goals that give you a shot of staying in the league. It's all well and good working really hard off the ball, making them much more difficult to play against. but they're strikers. They're in the team to score. Semenyo joined Man City. Again, I think this is a wild transfer, isn't it? At £62 million. He was one of the best Premier League performers across the first half of the campaign at Bournemouth. Super two-footed, an amazing finisher. He started really well at Man City, despite the fact he struggled, I thought, against Spurs, particularly in 1v1 situations where I wanted him to stand his defender up and go round him. And I know that's not necessarily his game. He wants to play and operate in wider spaces, but those are the moments where you want your £62 million signings to make real big difference. He took his goal very, very well, though. And he is just such a natural finisher off of both feet. He could play as a number 9 for me. Loads of clubs were going to try and go for him in the summer when that release clause got reduced even more. So again, I feel like it's City beating teams to the punch. This is another top signing. Donyell Malen joined Roma on loan with a €25 million buy clause. This surprised me because I actually thought he was doing okay as a backup to Ollie Watkins, but again, PSR potentially coming into play here, the fact that they wanted to sign Tammy Abraham coming into play, and he isn't a natural 9. He can play out wide, he can also play as a second striker. Watkins has had injury problems throughout the season. I think this is an okay deal for everybody involved. Don't think he's going to be a superstar at Roma, but he'll be very solid, very consistent. I can see him scoring 10 plus league goals across the second half of the campaign. Strand Larsen got his move to Crystal Palace for £48 million. This is a big fee. And of course, this was sort of involved in the domino striker options on the market, where Jean-Philippe Mateta felt like he was going to AC Milan, did 2 medicals. AC Milan pulled the plug on the deal, but it felt like the Strand Larsen move was so far down the line that Crystal Palace decided they were going to commit the funds there. They spent £85 million on Strand Larsen and Brennan Johnson in combination. Now, just in the summer, Newcastle were having £60 million bids knocked back for Strand Larsen when he was coming off the back of a 14-goal debut Premier League season, where he was extremely impressive, very physical, aerial dominance, an excellent finisher, coming off the back of a Celta Vigo campaign that was almost as good. But since then, just 1 Premier League goal so far this campaign, hasn't scored since October. And because of that, you have to say at £50 million, this is a big risk for Crystal Palace. It's by far their record transfer. He is going to start in that number 9 role, but Mateta stayed at the club, so what does that mean for his future? And look, there's no doubt he has natural talent, especially from a goal scoring and a physicality standpoint. And I actually think he fits this Crystal Palace role under Ole Glasner pretty much perfectly. But at that fee, ooh, this is going to be some watch for the next 6 months. Ward-Prowse joined Burnley on loan. The only signing Burnley made. It feels like they're resigned to their fate. They were terrible last night against Sunderland in that 3-0 loss. Obviously, Josh Cullen's ACL, disastrous, so you'd think he's going to come in and add some experience where Cullen is going to miss out. It's only a loan deal. I think it's okay. The return of Douglas Luiz to Aston Villa also happened on loan. Obviously, they've got massive injury problems in the midfield to McGinn, Kamara, Tielemans, the list goes on. I think this is a good deal. I think Emery knows him well. He moved him on because he felt like he could progress that squad with the signings of players like Onana. Those players proved that they could progress the team because Aston Villa are in a title race right now. But when you have the volume of injuries, you have a player who knows the club as well as Douglas Luiz does and can come back and have impact like that, as we saw in his debut, where he looked really calm and composed, very comfortable, because it's an environment and a coach he's worked with before. You don't have that transition period. Given that there's no cost to this move, I think it's a really good bit of business. It's a smart transfer. Adam Armstrong joined Wolves. He was doing pretty well at Southampton. Yet again, he is a second-tier machine, isn't he? His championship record is basically second to none. It was already over 10 goals so far for the campaign in 25 appearances. This feels a little bit like future-proofing from Wolves, who are going to go down this season. To have Adam Armstrong in the building already ahead of next season's championship campaign, it's actually probably quite smart. You know he's going to bang goals in for you when you drop down to the second tier, and you never know. He might take some of that championship form into the Premier League across the second half of this campaign. Chelsea recalled Mamadou Sarr from his loan at Strasbourg, where he was captaining the side. Had an amazing AFCON. I thought he was one of the most impressive defenders in the entire competition. His physical gifts are clear for the world to see, but he was very good on the ball as well. This is an interesting one, though, because obviously Involved in this deal is Semenyo, who was recalled from Dortmund, despite the fact he was having a good time there. You saw him crying when he was leaving the club. It was expected he was going to come in and feature for Chelsea. He's now been sent out on loan to Strasbourg. They've brought Sarr from Strasbourg back into the club. Is this with a move potentially of seeing Sarr start games? Because Rosenior has worked with him, so he knows exactly what he's going to get from Sarr. And given the central defensive options Chelsea have got, maybe Rosenior is thinking he could play a substantial amount of minutes in multiple cup competitions for him. Either way, I'm intrigued to see it. I suppose because it's a recall, I'm just going to put it in the middle tier for now. Stefan Ortega joined Forest on a permanent deal, and literally, as he was sat in the stands watching his first game, Matt Sells pulled his groin and is going to be out for a considerable amount of time. Angus Gunn had to come on for his first Forest appearance. This is going to be a good deal. Yes, he is on the older side, but because of that injury and because the fee is so nominal, if he comes in and across the next 2 months has an impact in more than 4 or 5 games for Forest and keeps them in the division, he's a pretty outstanding goalkeeper, then it would have been worth it. It would have been a good deal. We have to talk about Bournemouth signing Rayan as well. I actually think this is a wow. I really do. His ceiling in the Brazilian top tier was so high. He is so highly rated amongst Brazilian commentators and people that have watched the Brazilian league far more than I have, that it feels like this could be a bit of a coup. Bournemouth's recruitment in recent campaigns has been outstanding. I think as you saw in his debut, he already, despite the fact he's just 19 years old, looks physically capable and ready to perform in this league. He's got extremely sharp feet. His decision making is excellent. I don't think the fee was that bad. And the fact that Bournemouth have been able to get it done in the January window speaks volumes to their recruitment. It feels a little bit like when they signed Krupi from Lorient. Now we're talking about one of the best young strikers in European football, in my opinion. It wouldn't be a total shock if in 12 months' time we're saying, wow, where on earth and how on earth did Bournemouth manage to get their hands on Rayan? There's already some of Europe's elite clubs interested in him. Tammy Abraham joined Villa for 20 million euros. This was a really funny little deal, wasn't it? Because Besiktas made the move permanent for 12 million euros when he was on loan from Roma to sell him the same day for 20 million euros, make 8 million euros in a day. Some deal for Besiktas. But he was actually scoring quite a lot of goals out in Turkey, and his record for Villa the first time he played for the club was outstanding. Let's not forget the 25 goals that took him out of the Championship. Again, like a lot of Villa's business in this window, it's been revolving around players that can come in and have immediate impact because they know the club. Be that Douglas Luiz, be that the return of Leon Bailey, be that Tammy Abraham arriving at the club, who's got a history there as well. Probably going to be a backup striker, but with Watkins' injury record so far this campaign, his own struggles, maybe Tammy goes on to start more games than we're expecting. I thought he'd scored on his debut, only for it to be chalked off that 19-second VAR rerun back to a ball going out of play. This could end up being a good deal. I'm torn between the two here. Calvin Phillips finally got out of Man City. I totally forgot he was even at the club across the first half of the campaign, but he has gone out on loan to Sheffield United. I'm actually pretty happy for him. It's a good deal for Sheffield United. They are getting an extremely experienced operator, a player who can play in multiple different midfield roles, and I still think has an excellent level for the Championship. You know, for him, he's getting out. He's going to be able to play some football rather than being stuck in the reserve list, occasionally making the bench. This is a good deal for everybody involved, except for City, who spent £50 million on this guy and have not given him a sniff. Lorenzo Lucca joined Forest on loan, a €1 million loan fee with a €40 million option, not mandatory to buy clause. I am extremely excited about this one. I can't wait to see Lorenzo Lucca play for Forest. I'm putting this down in good deal just because of my excitement. 6'7", 204 centimetres. Is this Wout Weghorst 2.0? Does anybody remember my love for Wout Weghorst? 6'7" monster. Lorenzo Lucca, 6'7" monster. Decent goal scoring record at Udinese. Didn't really make the step up when he went to Napoli. It didn't really work. But Sean Dyche, 6'7" Italian striker, was a match made in heaven. Spurs signed Sousa for £13 million. He's only 19 years old. He's definitely a project player, one for the future. The reports I've read on him in Brazil rate him extremely highly. Does mean they've got a lot of left-back depth as well. When you think of Udogie, Jed Spence able to play there. Ben Davies, despite having injury problems, able to play there. Now Sousa, but he's definitely one for the future. Ethan Nwaneri left Arsenal. We have got some leavers in here like Fulkrug. Ethan Nwaneri joined Marseille to work with Roberto De Zerbi. we nearly saw a situation last week where Roberto De Zerbi resigned, and the reason Nwaneri had gone to Marseille didn't play out. I think there were multiple conversations between Arteta, De Zerbi, Nwaneri as to how he was going to function, how he was going to play, and he has played. He started the first 2 games, he scored a great goal in his opener, but then we nearly saw De Zerbi walk. What would have happened in that situation? Do you know what I mean? Like, this is the thing about De Zerbi. He's so blockbuster, he's so combustible that this loan move could go to crap if he just suddenly decides he's going to leave the club. I think Nwaneri can do a lot of development under a coach as good as De Zerbi. He is a tactical master. Nwaneri's going to play far more football than he was going to under Arteta at Arsenal because of the volume of players he's got in his position for a team that are trying to win a league title. And there's no doubt he has superstar quality in that left foot. Finally, we've got Lucas Paqueta returning home to Brazil for 40 million euros. I mean, yikes. I know he's had a really, really difficult time in England for things we're not going to go into off the field, but I just feel like he still had so much more to offer a team in Europe. No offence to the Brazilian league. This is the most expensive signing in the history of the division at 40 million euros. But surely there were Europa League, Champions League clubs that could have dealt with and used Paqueta on the continent. For me, this is a real disappointment. So those were all of the January transfers ranked. Let me know what you think of it in the comments below and who you're most excited to see. Personally, it's Lorenzo Lucca every day of the week. 6'7", working with Sean Dyche. Oh, it's perfect. Let me know in the comments below if you enjoyed this video. Thanks very much for watching, everybody. I'll see you later. Bye-bye.